Hello students, welcome back to the Recitals in Depth by Vajiram and Ravi. Here we will be covering the economy and infrastructure October 2024 current affair topics in great detail. The broader themes that we are going to cover today are as follows: Indian agriculture, money and banking, public finance, investment and infrastructure, and social development. So stay tuned. So hello students, welcome back to this month's Recitals in Depth by Vajiram and Ravi, where we'll be discussing the topics of economy and infrastructure for the month of October 2024. And here are the topics that we are going to cover right in the entirety of this month, and it's best advice to all of you that all of you can open your recitals and you can watch the video alongside, because this will be giving you a time frame within which you can complete all the topics of recitals within the duration of this video itself. So people have this doubt as to how to complete the recitals at one go. This is the best solution. Watch the video together and also try to read and underline and highlight, take down notes, whatever we are going to discuss in the discussion today. So let us get started. Now the Bureau of Indian Standards along with the Agriculture Ministry are coming up with a very good recommendation to set up what we know as National Agriculture Code. Now this code will be just like the codes for which we have the National Building Code, National Electricity Code, because we have to understand the very significance of the word code, right? Also in recent times we have seen the various codification of laws, right? Can anyone in the comment section let me know what are the most famous laws right now which has been codified recently, right? Because we have to understand the codification is actually associated with framing some laws, right, or rules or guidelines regarding a very broad topic. And in this, the broad topic is our Indian agriculture, because we need to understand that in an agricultural setup we have so many tasks, so many stakeholders, so many authorities, farmers, right, and also various amounts of say geographies all across the countries, right? So that is why we need to understand, we need to have a proper national guideline on various say agricultural activities and the entire supply chain. So that is why the BIS, right, has begun the process of formulating a National Agricultural Code, and this has a particular deadline of 2025, by which by the month of October 2025 this code will be in force. And this is where we have to look into this particular article from a little more, or say a broader perspective. When we try to understand the entire agricultural supply chain, what do you mean by that? Any agricultural produce, any agricultural crop that goes via a particular streamlined supply chain. And we know, as is the case with almost all of the supply chains of electronic items, of smartphones, the proper functioning of our Indian agriculture sector relies on how better we manage each and every stage of this supply chain. For example, take the production of food crops, fruits, vegetables, right? It starts with our small holder, or say small and marginal farmers, farmer associations, or various people who provide inputs such as seeds, pesticides, fertilizers, and so on, from where we use each and every resource we have. The things that we have, the say people which we have, we use everything to produce various items in our agricultural sector. From there we will be needing to harvest the crops, we need to transport the crops, right, during which logistics companies or say transportation companies become very important. After which we understand that we also need to sometimes process the agricultural items, right? We need to process the rice, we need to process the various vegetables, right? So this is why we also need sometimes machines and so on. Apart from this, when we go on to secondary processing, packaging, handling, and finally when we supply the crops to the market side, we understand there are so many processes, so many people who are involved. Now this NSE is exactly trying to coordinate each and every part of this agricultural supply chain. It is trying to formulate a single, or say one size fits all guideline, and also various amounts of rules, bylaws, regulations, which all of the stakeholders best must follow, right? And we understand that the center, right, cannot, have a direct legislation on agriculture, because we know that agriculture is a state subject, correct? And this is exactly the reason why the NSE also will be kind of a, say, lighthouse for all of the states to replicate this particular code at the respective state government level too, because this is trying to bring in a harmony of all the stakeholders in the agricultural field. And that is why we have to understand that Bureau of Indian Standards, why it is coming into the picture, because we understand that BIS is trying to frame the particular standards of any product or any service in the country, right? Be it the electrical code, the housing code, which, for example, say if you're building a house, we need to maintain particular standards, right? So that standardization is given by the BIS, which is a national body which sets standards for different products across various economic sectors. So alongside this, the BIS also is kind of interested in setting the standards with reference to agriculture. So in agriculture, it has already set some standards for various machinery, such as tractors, harvesters, and inputs such as fertilizers and pesticides. But grand picture is missing in this particular standardization, because, as I told you, as I showed you also, all of you, that Indian agriculture, or agriculture per se in almost all of the countries, is not, say, only related to, say, these activities, or say setting standards for these activities. We have to set standards. We have to set standards across the entire supply chain. So this is exactly what the NSE is trying to achieve, right? Because there are still some areas which are not covered by the BIS standards, right? For example, there are no standard for agriculture practices, such as preparation of fields. For example, see, if you are trying to, cultivate a crop, what are the standards for irrigation? And we have to understand, in India, or in countries, developing nations like India, we waste a lot of resources just at the very starting phase of our, cropping. We waste a lot of water. We actually, let go a lot of fertilizers into the soil, which later creates trouble. That is, having ramifications on the environmental side, ecological side. So that is where we need to have a proper amount of standards, right, for irrigation, micro irrigation, water usage, right, according to various reports. It is very good to know for your answer writing that India is one of the world's largest country when it comes to water export. Now, what is this? The cultivation of rice requires a lot of water, right? And most often, the water is wasted, right? The water is wasted for various reasons. But at the end of the day, aren't we using our own country's own water resources? And also, India is one of the world's among the major rice exporters too. Now, if we export rice, which itself is wasting a lot of water, aren't we exporting water indirectly? Right? So this is exactly one of the serious issues that India is facing, or say Indian agriculture is facing, because we do not have any water use guidelines, micro irrigation guidelines, preparation of field standards, due to which this kind of external activities, or say externalities, negative externalities on the environment, on the country as a whole, is being observed as of now. So that is why, for a long period of time, policymakers have felt a need for a framework like the NSE. Right? Now, when we talk about the NSE in general, what do we mean by, its objectives? Now, there can be a potential mains question on this particular topic, because, NSE is a very important policy decision by the government of India, right? Because it is trying to set the standards for the entire agriculture supply chain. And this is why, this will be covering the entire agriculture cycle, and also will be containing a guidance note for future standardization, because this will be acting as a lighthouse for the various state governments to implement this code. The code will be having two parts. The first will be containing general principles for all crops, and the second will be dealing with crop specific standards for paddy, wheat, oilseeds and pulses, which are the major crops in the country, which are not only consumed in huge volume domestically, but also exported abroad. And also we have to understand the World Trade Mechanism functions on rules and proper standardization as proposed and also as advocated by the World Trade Organization, right? We also have the agreement on agriculture based on the various subsidies. We have the various agreements, right, on, say, qualitative standards related to goods and services, including the agricultural goods and services under the WTO. And we know that India is a member of the WTO. And if we have to be a member, we have to obey by the various rules and standards if you want to export and if you want to have a trade with the rest of the world. That is why it becomes important to set standards in two parts, right? And it will be serving as a guide for farmers, agriculture universities, and officials involved in the field. So the stakeholders, the most important stakeholders, farmers, agriculture universities, and officials, these are the people who are bringing this entire activity together. They will be, adhering to the standards. In addition to the standards for agriculture machinery, right? Already we have, tractors and various agricultural equipments under BIS, say standardization. But apart from that, it will be covering all agriculture process such as crop selection, land preparation, sowing, transplantation, irrigation, drainage, soil health management, plant health management, harvesting, threshing, primary processing, post-harvest, sustainability, and record management. So if you understand, this is the entire agriculture supply chain, right? So all of the activities will be covered. It will be also including standards for input management such as use of chemical fertilizers, pesticides, and weedicides, as also standards for crop storage and traceability. This is actually pointing towards sustainability in agriculture, correct? So finally, it will be covering all new and emerging areas such as natural farming, organic farming, as also using technology in our agriculture. We know that recently the Indian government came up with a very novel initiative in agriculture known as the Digital Agriculture Mission, under which we have a very important initiative of AgriStack, which is the database, digital database of the various farmers, their crops, their land records, and various other inputs regarding the farmland. And if we have a proper digital mission where the entire ecosystem is digital, right, say coordinated, and also apart from this we have digital crop surveys. We also have various schemes and policies regarding boosting research and development at agriculture universities. So all of these programs at the central level must be kind of adhering to a particular code. This is exactly the code that we need as of now, right? So we need to understand the importance of this particular initiative. And finally, this particular code will be also coming up with the standardized agriculture demonstration farms. As you can understand from the name itself, right? This is actually a practice which is quite famous at Ghana. Right? This picture itself is from the Ghana rural areas where they're following something which we know as demonstration farms. Now these demonstration farms, as we can understand, right, from the very word itself, these are actually experimental areas where you experiment with new crop practices, right, new practices or say new technologies to actually see and try out the various varieties of new crops, emerging crops, and so on. So these are the various farms where in India it is envisaged that these will be set up at major universities, major agricultural research universities, where the various field trials and every aspects of standardized say cropping will be tested and tried. And the reason why which this is integrated with the National Agricultural Code is the National Agricultural Code will be setting up proper standards for various agricultural say practices, and these particular standards along with the crops and the practices and the technology that will be implemented in the code for which it will be having some various guidelines, those standards will be implemented at the standardized agricultural demonstration firms in the country. So this is the main feature of this particular initiative. Now, after we have learned everything, as usual, like always, I have questions for most of the topics. So please do let me know after reading the question what is the answer of the same in the comments below. Recently, the Ministry of Road Transport and Highways have launched the Humsafar Policy for the better functioning of the Indian highways. And this is actually trying to transform how people or we as Indians use the highways over a long period of time. And as we can understand, this very policy is trying to transform the Indian highway ecosystem. And when we talk about the policy, we have to understand that there are many facilities which are available at the highways. For example, we must be having robust roads, right? We must be having proper services such as various dhabas, right? Next, petrol pumps. We also have various other services, right? For example, say police patrol, the presence of police and so on. So based on this, we understand we are entitled to have various kind of services, right? And due to which we must be having a proper comprehensive policy as to how these services should be meeting the highest amount of standards. Based on this, sometime while ago, the Rajmarg Yatra app was launched, which is trying to have a proper amount of reporting or seeking the various passengers and their feedback on how the Indian highways are operating. It is also trying to give proper enjoyable experience while empowering entrepreneurs, generating jobs in the highway sector. How? Because it is having various features into how you can actually, if you face some issues at the Indian highways, you can click the pictures here and we can upload the image, and this will be directly going to the NHAI, right? And they will be taking proper feedback into the same. So this is exactly the policy that the government of India as of now is trying to foster, to build, and actually it is actually trying to improve the quality of our Indian highways, right? So this is trying to provide a comprehensive framework that is, the highway commuters must be having access to well-maintained, standardized and hygienic facilities at the Indian highways. Now this policy will also be trying to provide some additional services at fuel stations, such as baby feeding rooms, right? We also will be having proper EV charging infrastructure at the various fuel stations. We will be also having various amounts of parking spaces along with wheelchair provisions for the disabled sections of the populations, due to which the experience of Indian highways will be much better going forward, right? And also along with this particular app, the particular highway commuters, if they're having any issues with reference to any services at the Indian, highways, so they can report it instantly to the NHAI. And this is actually trying to promote, particular amount of rights and also service standards for the highway commuters. There will be also a regular reporting and monitoring provisions, due to which inspections will be done as to check the various standards and the rules and regulations at all, if they're followed at the national highways, correct? And this will be also been trying to bring in a perspective of sustainability and eco-friendly behavior between the commuters too, because they can easily report any non-eco-friendly practice that is at the highways, correct? So those things also will be taken care of. So this is exactly why we need policies like this, such as the Humsafar policy, and this is very important for your prelims, right? Because over a period of time, India is trying to boost its own logistics sector. And India aims to be at one of the top five places across the entire world when it comes to better logistics. We know that logistics encompass not only roads but also railways, waterways, airways, right, where we can achieve the unified interface of free movement and easy movement of goods and services that can lead to the higher amount of ease of doing business in the country. So this is exactly why the government of India, is trying to coming up with various policies to improve the logistics sector. Now in the comment section, can you let me know of 2-3 more important schemes where the government of India is trying to promote better logistics in the rest of the, say, logistical modes apart from the highways here. We talked about the highways. Now you let me know what are the other initiatives the government of India is trying to follow in the railway sector, the aviation sector, in the shipping sector, and so on. So with this, you let me know what is the answer of the same of this question in the comments below. The Union Cabinet has merged all the centrally sponsored schemes related to agriculture sector under 2 umbrella schemes here. Pradhan Mantri Rashtriya Krishi Vikas Yojana, right? And the Krishonnati Yojana. Now we have to understand that the centrally sponsored schemes are those schemes where both the center and the state governments, they contribute funds, right? For example, say if it is a scheme related to our agriculture, right? So maybe the central government will be giving 50% of the funds and the state government will be contributing the rest of the funds. Now this particular central sponsored scheme can span across the agriculture sector and various other industrial and various other sectors too. But the main idea of centrally sponsored scheme is that the resources or say the funds are shared between the center and the state government. The center government come up with new centrally sponsored scheme, but to implement this, the states have to also contribute some funds. While we can have some exemptions for the states related to some northeastern states and some states where we have a larger proportion of tribal population or say other sections of the vulnerable sections of the populations, right? So for those states, maybe the funding can be really, relaxed to a little bit or to a little extent. But the main idea in this particular scheme is that the funds are being shared. And also there is another kind of government scheme that we know as central sector scheme, where 100% of the funds are contributed by the government of India, correct? That is by the central government. And here are trying to club all the centrally sponsored scheme related to the agriculture sector. So with this, let us explore a little bit more regarding the 2 particular schemes. Now the Pradhan Mantri Rashtriya Krishi Vikas Yojana is a scheme which is trying to promote sustainable agriculture, right? As we can understand from this particular, say, chart here, it is trying to promote sustainability in our agriculture. As we can see here, it starts with soil health management, rain-fed area development, agroforestry, Paramparagat Krishi Vikas Yojana, agricultural mechanization, crop residue management, per drop more crop, that is a Pradhan Mantri Krishi Sinchai Yojana, crop diversification program. We have the project report component of the scheme, and finally accelerator funds for agricultural startups. So at one end we have the Pradhan Mantri RKVY, which is trying to promote sustainability in our Indian agriculture. So this is exactly the reason why all of the schemes, all of the centrally sponsored schemes that were related to the sustainable component, right, they have been clubbed together, right? The rest of the schemes, which is the Pradhan Mantri Krishonnati Yojana, it is trying to promote, say, other aspects of food security, right, nutritional security in the country. So these are actually the 2 sections of the scheme where these 2 schemes will be implemented via the state government, right, where the particular components of, say, the expenditure will be shared approximately in the ratio of around 60% to 70% that will be spent by the central government, and rest all of the funds will be will be dedicated by the state governments. And here we have to understand that these two schemes have been clubbed together and they have been rationalized. Now, what are the reasons for the same? The first reason due to which it has been rationalized is actually to try to manage things more efficiently. Now, for example, take this particular scheme, per drop more crop. Now, before rationalization, or say before clubbing all of the centrally sponsored scheme into one scheme, all of these were separate schemes, right? Due to which the various state governments, they need to time and again seek approvals from the center, right? So right now, if we combine all of the schemes at one place, one portal, then the state governments can only say apply once and hence get the benefits of all the schemes. So it is a particular kind of an effort to make the schemes much more efficient. Next, it is also trying to eradicate all of the schemes which are duplicates, right? Which are duplicatory in nature. They can, particular schemes can be, duplicates, or say some of the purposes of a particular scheme is made by the purpose of another scheme. Correct? So this is how we can actually try to see that which of the various schemes are not in consonance with the rest of the other schemes. So we have to maintain a particular harmony in this particular, say, effort to rationalize all of the government schemes. Next, right now, the overall need to focus specifically on the sustainability part and also on the food and nutrition part separately. Correct? So on one side we have this Pradhan Mantri RKVY scheme, on the other side we have the Krishonnati Yojana. So both of them are focusing on two different items specifically, so this can actually lead to greater emphasis on the two items, and also at the same time can have a proper amount of harmony too, right? And also the state governments are at profit, right? Because they can actually come up with proper focus plans, statewide plans, and can actually allocate funds according to the most important domain or say area that they focus on, right? So these are the entire things that we need to discuss in this particular one, and after this you let me know what is the answer of this MCQ in the comments below. Recently, the government of India has signed the letter of intent of India to join the International Energy Efficiency Hub. Now, this is a very important body where we need to focus on, particularly for our prelims specific information. Now, when we talk about the hub, it is about India's drive to be energy efficient over a period of time, because we have the broader Panchamrit under which India is transitioning, or say having various efforts to transition to a cleaner and a greener economic future, right? So this is where India's Panchamrit is trying to achieve net zero status by 2070, where the main aspects, right, the main aspects of the same is also to promote higher use of renewable energy, right? Because to have a particular pathway to become net zero, right, to become net zero by 2070, we need to focus on our renewable energy generation, right? Also, in the previous discussions, we have discussed a lot on the various green initiatives, hydropower initiatives, or say the various other renewable energies that India is focusing on right now, right? So this is exactly why India is also trying to join an international hub, right? So this is exactly the reason why India is trying to collaborate internationally on this particular agenda, right? Now, this particular hub is consisting as of July 2024 around 16 members, right? And it was established in 2020 as a successor to the International Partnership for Energy Efficiency Cooperation, and this is how this hub has evolved over a period of time, right? And India's sustainable goals and its commitment is kind of having its aspirations if India will be joining here, right? Why? Because India will be benefiting from various collaborating opportunities from the rest of the world. We understand that climate finance climate finance is a very crucial portion or say debate of the ongoing discussions even at the COP 29. Now in the comment section, can you let me know where the COP 29 is being held as of now? And also we understand that this climate finance is dominating the debate between the developed nations versus the developing nations, where the developed nations always have pinned the blame or say pinned the main responsibility of fighting climate change globally, right? They feel, the developed nations such as the Western nations, they feel that the responsibility of climate change must be falling equally, or say the responsibility of coping up with climate change must be falling equally on all of the nations, irrespective of any historical emissions. But the developing countries, they claim that historically it was the Western nations which have polluted our entire world. It is due to the efforts of industrial revolution in UK, in Europe, in US later, that we are suffering from higher carbon dioxide emissions as of now. So this is exactly the reason why we understand that climate finance is important, because the developing nations, they hardly have any financial resources of themselves or the technology of themselves to bring in clean and green energy. And this is exactly why the calls for greater democratic climate finance in the rest of the world, in majorly the developing nations and small island countries, where the climate finance can help those countries transition to become net zero. While most of the developed nations, they aspired net zero by 2050, right? There are countries, developed nations, which try to achieve this particular net zero even before 2050, but it becomes very impossible without climate finance for the developing nations to even transition by 2070 and so on. So this is exactly the reason why India is trying to join various hubs and various conferences, summits, organizations when it comes to its efforts in mobilizing climate finance from the rest of the world. Correct? It is also having various support agenda from the global climate change efforts and NGOs and organizations. This particular thing or action will be also supporting India's greenhouse gas reduction efforts, and India, it will be implemented by the Bureau of Energy Efficiency. Correct? So who will be the implementing agency? This is very important for our prelims, specific information. And if we can look into who are the other 16 members of this hub, we have Argentina, Australia, Brazil, Canada, China, Denmark, the European Commission, France, Germany, Japan, Korea, Luxembourg, Russia, Saudi Arabia, the United States and the United Kingdom. Right? So it is also important for us to see that major of the Western nations, majority of them are also present in this hub. So it will be important for India to collaborate on this particular issue internationally. Now with this, you let me know what the answer of this is in the comments below. Now recently, the Food Corporation of India has taken a brilliant initiative, that is the Darpan. Now FCI is in the process of launching this particular portal to integrate the various state portals and the FCI portals engaged in food grain operations. We know that the Food Grain Corporation of India, or the Food Corporation of India, is the sole agency who is responsible for collecting various important food grains such as rice and wheat, right, amongst various other crops, directly from the farmers, right? And at which price they purchase this? They purchase this at MSP. Now after the farmers supply their rice and wheat to the FCI, they have to store this particular food grains at various warehouses, safe houses, right? So as we can see here, these are stored across various warehouses of FCI across the entire country, right? And this is also one of the most important agenda of the government as it completes 100 days in office. There is a present government. Why? Because we have to understand there are various reports and there are genuine studies that were conducted into the functioning of the FCI, that most of the food grains and the resources, agriculture resources of the food grain, they perish. Why they perish? Because of the lack of availability of various warehouses, of a lack of a proper network where maybe a particular FCI warehouse at any other geographical location, they can contact the other FCI location to transport the excess food grain from there to here, right? So we can actually manage our resources if we can keep on trying to have a proper collaboration at the state level and at the central level too, right? So this is exactly the reason why we will be having this Darpan portal to have a proper amount of streamlined functions in the FCI operations. Now, when we look at this particular portal here, this is exactly what this portal is looking like. Now, this is the depot online system which facilitates the management of inventory and operations, cutting down on paper records, and this is also something which we know as a green initiative, right? So in your mains answers, if you want to write some of the some different green initiatives that the government of India is taking in the agricultural sector, this is also one of them, because the overall logistics, inventory, operations of the FCI takes a lot of paperwork, and if we can unify everything at one portal, it will be an end-to-end portal that is entirely digital, correct? So this is also aligning with India's Digital India mission, which is trying to streamline and have a proper amount of user interface or an online say UI, which is kind of trying to subscribe the various, say, operations and logistics, roles of the Food Corporation of India. So this is an online portal. The main objective here is to have higher amount of efficiency, right, and reduce wastages, because this will be an end-to-end digital portal where all of the warehouses will be connected digitally, right? This is also having a smooth, say, user interface which is quite friendly, and this is having many roles and many functions to look into the better management of the FCI stock, and also from the data that we will be obtaining from the operation of this portal, be the data on procurement or say the MSP payments to the farmers and so on. So based on the various data we'll be getting, we can actually use this data to have better amount of policy making at our disposal that can have higher amount of targeted interventions for the various farmers in the country. Apart from this, this will be also be integrated with the various, say, internal and external systems, with various other systems which can be even, say, linking FCI with the other state departments, right? So collaboration and, say, various interdepartmental activities will be much more efficient, thus bringing in harmony in the food distribution supply chain, right? And finally, it will be also looking into the various amounts of, say, approaches where the government of India is trying to make such processes extremely simple for day-to-day use of, say, the operators at the various mandis or at the various warehouses be, right? So it is also having this mobile approach, right? Mobile or say app based approach, which is kind of very super easy to use, right? So these particular initiatives are much more needed as of now to revolutionize the FCI and its operations over a period of time. So we can easily use these particular points, this particular, say, news in its entirety to boost or enhance your answer writing skills, right? So after we have looked at this, you let me know what is the answer of this in the comments below. Recently, the government of India has extended the benefits of RoDTEP scheme till September 2025, and it is extremely important for us to know what this scheme is all about. But before that, we'll be looking into a very brief background with a very brief example. Now, imagine that we have an Indian textile exporter who is regularly exporting, say, various textile items to the United States, right? Now, this particular textile industry is based in India, right? And it is, for example, say in a particular month, it is exporting around, say, 10 lakh rupees worth of garments, finished garments to the United States, right? And you know, as a nation, India would always want to have higher exports, right? So India would want every month the, say, textile factory to export even much more value of exports. Why? Because we know the formula of, or say the easy formula of calculating GDP is C plus I plus G plus X minus M. So the export part is here. If export increases, we understand that the GDP also increases. Now, apart from this, exports also creates a lot of jobs and opportunities. If we have higher exports, we'll be having greater amount of jobs and opportunities, right? Also, when we understand, if a country, like India, is aiming for higher exports, don't you think the government of India, in principle or as a part of its policy, would be trying to, say, reduce the costs for exporters? For example, say, if this is a particular textile factory and there are many machines and equipments that this factory needs, preferably from various Western nations, right, for better productivity of its factory. So maybe, they have to import some items also, right, from the US and from the rest of the world maybe, right? So this is how maybe to boost exports, Government of India can reduce the cost for, say, various plants and machineries that various other companies are Indian companies are interested to import. So it bodes well if the costs are brought down at this import phases, right? So this is exactly how a country can boost its particular exports and have a greater or higher amount of GDP along with job creation, right? So in our example here, to understand exactly how this was functioning earlier, this was functioning via MEIS scheme. The full form is Merchandise Exports from India scheme. What it is looking at. Now remember, come to our example here. For example, every month this particular exporter is exporting around 10 lakh rupees of garments to the United States, correct? And now the government of India is telling, okay, under this merchandise exports from India scheme, what I can give or what I can help for the exporter is that I can give, for example, say 2% to around 20% of the entire value of export that is they are sending to the US. So for example, let us take a million value, say for example 10%. So if government has decided that, okay, I will be say giving around 10% benefit, so it will be coming to be around, say, 1 lakh rupees. So this is the 1 lakh rupees of benefits, right, plus some refunds that this exporter will be entitled to. First, let us talk about the refunds. See, for production of garments, for example, that they're exporting to the US, this factory is purchasing the raw materials, the various, say, clothing items, wires, buttons and so on which we have GST and various other charges, right? So these are the, say, taxes which they have paid to the government to prepare goods for export, right? But don't you think that these extra charges along with GST and so on, these are increasing the cost of, say, the final price, correct? So this is exactly the reason why the government thought, okay, we can give or we can actually refund back the GST after they have exported the goods, to the various other nations, right? So this is the part of the refund. Apart from this, the government itself wants to give benefits to reduce the cost of the exported items, because if Indian textiles will be having a low price, then the demand from the rest of the world will be higher, right? So simply this 1 lakh benefit was given earlier. For example, this particular percentage, 10%, is just for our example. Now, if this particular company got this 1 lakh rupees, right? Now this 1 lakh rupees is actually not given as a cash to the textile manufacturer here. It will be given as a duty credit scrip. Now, this duty credit scrip, this company can use in the future, if at all in the future they want to, for example, purchase some machineries from the US or the rest of the world. For example, this machinery is costing 1 crore rupees. Now this textile manufacturer can claim 1 lakh rupees of discount in matters of various customs, and various duties that are levied when a particular item is imported into India. So that person, or say this company, can have a kind of a discount rather, because of the earlier benefits because of which they have exported various items to the US, right? So this was exactly the MIES. Now in this part we have to bring in the World Trade Organization, or say WTO principles. While the WTO, one of the most important principle is that taxes or various duties, right, they must not be exported. What it means? That, for example, we discussed about the GST and the various fees and charges, right? We also discussed why they will be getting a refund of the various charges that will be levied by the government of India on, say, various raw materials and so on. Correct? So this is a very good practice, because externally, or say in the external sector, in the external economy, we need to bring down the prices of final goods and services to as low as possible. That is, based on competition, right? And any kind of taxes or duties, they must not be exported. If we add the GST and if we add the various import or say export duties and so on, the final price will be higher. That will not be good for the world economy, or say will be not good for the Indian economy also, right? So that is why WTO believes in this principle that taxes and duties should not be exported in the price that is also hidden in the price of the final goods and services. But here, what the WTO does not agree is with the other thing, that is the benefit, right? Now, if we talk about this 10%, on which rationale this 10% is arrived at, right? Why the government, for example, say if all the refunds amounted to just 2%, so should not the government of India be only giving 2%, right? Because the further 8% will be reducing the prices down. While it is good for India, it is perfectly fine for India, because it is bringing down the Indian government price, and it will be in higher demand internationally. But don't you think a poorer nation from say Africa, or say even our own neighbor China will be complaining against the Indian government that, see, just like in our house, right, when we have debates between our younger siblings, right, our parents intervene, correct? So this is the reason why we cannot give too much of favor. If our parents support our brother or sister more, then we will be hurt, right? So this is the reason why India cannot discriminate based on the various other benefits that they're giving, right? Apart from, say, the refunds, that is quite justified, right? You should not be giving any other benefits, because after you give the benefits, then it is not a fair ground for the rest of the worlds, right? So this is exactly why this particular scheme was totally scrapped. This MEIS was scrapped, and this was a failed scheme, because there were many inefficiencies. Even the government of India could not keep up with the various duties, credit scripts, and also exports did not increase too much, right? Despite rupee devaluation during that time when MEIS was introduced, because with rupee devaluation we expect our exports to increase, but still that export did not rise, right? And at the same time, the government of India was spending 45,000 crores on these export benefits. So it was also leading to the loss of exchequers, correct? And the benefits range from 2 to 20%, based on the various sectors. And also this scheme is compliant with the WTO principles too. And that is why more targeted initiatives, that is more targeted, say charges, refunds and fees and fines, right? So those things will be refunded under the RoDTEP scheme. So this will be replacing the MEIS scheme, and as of now the RoDTEP scheme is right now in place, where simply if you are exporting 10 lakh rupees worth of say exports, now in the purchase of various say commodities, raw materials, you will be paying GST, you will be paying various value added taxes, you will be paying various other charges. Now these various other charges include the VAT, they were not included under MEIS, right? While they included GST and some other minor charges, now RoDTEP is actually much more comprehensive because it is not concerned with the other benefits, it is concerned with all of the charges. For example, say the production taxes, the taxes based on electricity consumption and so on. So these are the various small charges that you require for business, on which the government sometimes also levies a particular charge or tax. So those taxes along with GST, VAT and various other say customs and all of these things will be refunded to the exporters. Those refund will be in the form of electronic e-script, right, where this script will be say the exporters, they later can use for various other purposes, right? So this is a more WTO reliant scheme that is trying to bring in better amount of rule-based global trade, right? So this is exactly why we have to understand this particular scheme is much more better than the MEIS scheme, correct? So now after this, let us look at the benefits. The first benefit is that it is WTO compliant, right? Second is that this is also subjected to various monitoring, right, and regulation via totally digital portal, right? So what the various exporters they need to do, they need to look into the various invoices, bills and so on a digital portal, and the government will be constantly monitoring them and will be refunding the same, right? Also, when we understand this, the main benefit of the RoDTEP is to bring down the costs of production, right? This can also create higher amount of employment opportunities in the export sector, right? So this is also something which we have to keep in mind, that better employment opportunities in the export oriented sectors, it can be a possibility, correct? And also this will be raising the overall competitiveness of the Indian export market too. So this was all that was necessary. You let me know what the answer of the same is in the comments below. The union government has announced a hike in the minimum wage for the workers according to the variable dearness allowance. Now, you all must have heard the term dearness allowance. Now, dearness allowance is a particular, say, part of the compensation of the various workers, and this main component here is to adjust wages according to inflation. Now, you know that inflation reduces the real value of our currency, right? So to compensate the various workers, particularly workers who are working in hazardous sectors, in mining sectors, in construction sectors, particularly working under government of India, and also the various state governments, right? It is recommended right now that there must be a hike in the minimum wages that must be linked to the higher variable, dearness allowance. Now, here, when we look into the more details of this particular scheme, the government of India is trying to, placate workers mainly by adjusting their wages according to the inflation. So, and at one go, we can understand this is a kind of an inflation adjusted wage, right? Where the variable dearness allowance, they have been hiked, correct? Now, this particular minimum wage hike and this particular policy decisions taken by the central government, and the central government revised this VDA twice a year, right? This is revised twice a year, correct? The data on which the VDA will be increased will be actually fetched from the Labor Bureau, who have been tracking the CPI, Consumer Price Index of the industrial worker since 1944. They have been tracking the prices, the change in prices for the various goods and commodities which are actually bought by the industrial workers, correct? And they have been tracking since 1944, right? And the main inputs of as to how much the percentage and so on is actually been compiled by the Labor Bureau, which is under the Ministry of Labor and Employment, right? And the workers engaged in various sectors, including construction, loading, unloading, watch and ward, sweeping, cleaning, housekeeping, mining, agriculture, right? So all of these workers will be entitled to within, who are actually working under the central government establishments will be benefiting from the same, and they can actually have a higher quality of life. And they are actually, this particular, minimum wages are categorized based on the skill levels too, right? Based on the particular skills level belonging to unskilled, semi-skilled, highly skilled, and also geographical areas of various parts of the country belonging from, varying from A, B, C, right? They will be getting the benefits, and prominently it is to be remembered from the central government establishments. And further, it must be remembered that it will be the central government establishment workers who will be benefiting from this initiative. Now, the Prime Minister recently inaugurated the Bidkin industrial area, as we can see at Maharashtra. Now, this is a general part under the National Industrial Corridor Development Program, where within this program, we have 32 projects in 4 phases under 11 corridors, which form a part of the national infrastructure pipeline, right? Now we have various corridors such as the Delhi-Mumbai Industrial Corridor, Amritsar-Kolkata, Chennai-Bengaluru, Vizag-Chennai Industrial Corridor, Bengaluru-Mumbai, Odisha Economic Corridor, Hyderabad-Nagpur, Hyderabad-Warangal, Hyderabad-Bengaluru. We also have the extension of the CVIC to Kochi via Coimbatore and Delhi-Nagpur Industrial Corridor. So, all of these corridors via mapping is extremely important for our prelims, right? Where in this particular map, we can get all of the corridors at one place, and where we have to understand, we have the Delhi-Mumbai corridor and the Amritsar-Kolkata Industrial Corridor, which is actually in, the later stages of its completion too, where the main aspect or main agenda of this industrial corridor is to have proper amount of, say, industrial development across these corridors, where these corridors will be having top of the class logistical operations, logistical facilities, be it railways, roadways. Also, if you can see, most of the corridors, they're also going alongside the coastline, touching the major ports of the country. This will be also looking at improving the logistical sector in the shipping industry too, right? And this is an ambitious infrastructure, say, program of the government of India to have better amount of, say, industrial development and also urbanization across the entire country. It is trying to look into the various untapped geographies in the country where we have the scope of industrial development even further. It is also trying to create the new age industrial smart cities, right? So this is trying to create an era where smart cities will be there alongside, the industrial development in this particular corridor. Now here, when we talk about this particular aspect, Bidkin, right? Now this is spread around across 7,800 acres. And if we look at what are the facilities here, right? We can understand that this is a project site and we have national highways surrounding that, railways, we have the Hisar Airport, railway junction, drains, project boundary and so on. So this is an industrial park where most of the industries they can set up and they can actually try to engage their business operations. So for our examination point of view, we need to actually know the places which our Prime Minister inaugurates quite frequently in recent times for the betterment of our country, because we can use them in our main answers, particularly in our infrastructure answers, in our say various answers related to better amount of roadways, railways and so on. So these industrial areas will be focusing more upon job creation, upon making India a destination hub for manufacturing activities and the rest of the industrial applications too. So this is why we need to be aware of such developments. The Ministry of Corporate Affairs have launched the Prime Minister's Internship Scheme, and we have to understand this is intended to give opportunities to 1 crore youth across 500 top companies. The monthly stipend will be 5,000 per month for the selected interns for 1 year. And the portal opening for the candidates will be from October 12. While the dates are not important, but the main benefits are important. We have to understand that the government of India over a period of time is focusing on harnessing India's demographic dividend. Now, can anyone in the comment section tell me which is the particular year, according to the economic survey and also according to prominent international research organizations, which predict that India will be reaching its demographic peak, right? Demographic dividend by this year. And this will be in the 2040s, let me tell you, very soon. And we have to understand that India, to harness the youth power in the nation, we have to give proper opportunities of skilling imperatives, of internship, of proper handholding, of proper employment opportunities in the private sector, in the government sector, to actually realize India to be a developed country by 2047, that is 100 years of our independence. And this is exactly one of those many schemes that the government is focusing on to boost the entrepreneurship avenues, to boost the skilling avenues among the youth in the country. So the main details when we look at, firstly we have to look into the eligibility criteria. Now this is directly from your recitals, where the very first eligibility is that the applicants must have completed their higher secondary education or high school, right, as well as have a certificate from an ITI, a diploma from a polytechnic institute, or a degree such as BA, BSc, BCom, BCA, BBA, BPharm, etc. Right? So this is the main eligibility. It offers a 12-month internship program for youth aged between 21 to 24 years. Candidates should be Indian and should not work as a full-time job or full-time school too. However, candidates enrolled in online or distance learning programs are eligible to apply, right? So these are some important information for your prelims. Achha, when you have looked at eligibility, we also have to look at the ineligibility too. So who are ineligible? So people who are graduates from IITs, IIMs, national law universities, IISER, NIDs and IIITs, they are not eligible. Holders of qualifications such as CA, CMA, CS, MBBS, MBA, BDS or masters or any master's degree or higher degree are not. So it is to be noted that any master degree will not be eligible. Those undergoing skill apprenticeship, internships or student training under central or state government, they are also not eligible. Individuals who have completed apprenticeships under the NATS or NAPS, they are also not eligible because they will be getting separate internship opportunities. If the income of the family members are above 8 lakh rupees, they will also not be getting. And finally, permanent or regular government employee members, they would not be getting, right? So we can get the idea that people who are not eligible are actually somehow in a better off position to utilize their talents. People from the IITs, they are not eligible. Why? People who are pursuing CA or MBBS and so on, right, or who have this particular qualifications, they are not, because they are qualified to make a standard decent living, right? And they can use their skills, they can use their merit to have a proper avenue for employment opportunities. But there are various other sections of the populations who are not entitled directly from the beginning, directly from the school life and the college lives. So it is exactly looking at this particular target. Now here, interns will be receiving, as we have already discussed, right? Interns will be receiving 5,000 rupees per month. Apart from this is a very important, interesting coverage that they will be having under Pradhan Mantri Jeevan Jyoti Bima Yojana and also under the Pradhan Mantri Suraksha Bima Yojana, where under Jeevan Jyoti Bima Yojana, the candidates will be getting life insurance, in the age group of 18 to 50 years, worth 2 lakh for 330 per month. That will be entirely funded by Government of India. They do not have to spend a dime on this. And also accidental insurance for individuals between 18 to 70 worth 2 lakh rupees for 12 rupees per annum. That is also sponsored by the Government of India under this internship scheme, right? Now here, the various, candidates will be given internships at top 500 companies. And we have to understand from each company's CSR or corporate social responsibility, which generally means that after a particular profit margin, various companies must denote a particular percent of their profit margin for various social and welfare activities. So, for each company's CSR funding, the intern will be getting 500 rupees from the particular company, and the rest of the 4,500 from the Government of India, right? And also the particular applicants, they will be receiving a one-time financial support of 6,000 rupees. 6,000 rupees as one-time assistance will also be given, apart from the monthly stipends that will be continuing, but this will be given at one-time support. So these are the various financial benefits, financial assistance. So you let me know what is the answer of this particular MCQ in the comments below that we have discussed right now. Now recently the Samarth scheme has been extended for 2 more years, right, with a budget of around 495 crores to train around 3 lakh people in the textile related skill. So this Samarth scheme stands for Scheme for Capacity Building in the Indian Textile Sector. So it is a very important skill which is actually being empowered by the Ministry of Skill, right? Ministry of Skill and Entrepreneurship, right? So this is very important when we talk about the skilling imperatives in the Indian textile sector, because India's textile sector is actually having the potential to become one of the top textile sectors along the entire globe. And this particular scheme is implemented by the various implementing partners. This can be textile mills, various government institutes, right, and the various textile industries, the private sector, also the handlooms, hand mills, and so on. So this is trying to aim to have a proper amount of industrial effort in creating jobs in the organized textile sector and the related aspects. So it is trying to give proper amount of skills to the individuals to have them in the organized sector, right? So this is exactly what the skill is trying to aim for. And also under this particular scheme we have mandatory placement facility, where we have to understand that for 70% of the people in the entry level of this particular scheme, and for 90% of the upskilling programs where people try to upskill their existing skills, so they will be having this particular amount of mandatory placement. Also the skills are according to the National Skill Qualification Framework, where there are more than around 180 plus skills along in this particular textile sector. So all of the skills are being certified by the NSQF, and we have to understand that as of now around 3.1 lakh candidates have been trained here. And we have to also look into the significance that out of this around 80% have also received employment, and also in the same there are also many major, say, women employees proportion in this particular skilling program? Because here around 88% of the women trainees have been trained so far. So this is exactly the main significance of this Samarth scheme and all the important information for your prelims information. So you let me know what the answer of this is in the comment section.